Hello, we're back now. This is our third film, taking a documentary again, a whole different look at the world. What we're going to see is not a brand new documentary, but a documentary that just is highly respected. And I think if you have seen it, you'll understand. And it is so timely. So The Man Nobody Knew was written, produced, directed by Colby, about his father. His father was the head of the CIA. Carl is a documentary filmmaker. He never thought about making a film about his father until a few years ago, when suddenly he had the thought that many of us said, who was my father after all? Who was he really? He was a very contained man. Carl felt that he knew him, but as things went on, he realized that he didn't. So we're going to have a look at William Colby, a very can I say an odd guy? He looks like the average guy, but what a life. CIA, he was with it from the beginning till the time when he was fired. If you've seen the film, you'll understand. Although some of you may remember this, but let's take a look right now first, and then we'll come back and talk about him a little.
2 years of editing with Jay Freund, my editor in New York. Grace Guggenheim, the daughter of the famous Charles Guggenheim, was my producer, along with David Johnson in LA, and an extraordinary amount of archival footage. And so it's really a trip down, not just memory lane, but American foreign policy from World War II onward.
And how long have you been doing documentaries?
I've been doing them since the 70s, I'll have to admit. So
is that your
That's my profession. Work? I couldn't just come out of the box and make this movie. When you see the film, or as you've seen it, I had to be very careful what I said and how I said it in terms of accuracy. I'm dealing with some of the most important issues America's ever faced, so I did a lot of homework.
Here's your mother talking in the documentary.
Sometimes it was difficult to ascertain just who we were and where we were going at a certain point and so on. One evening, we went to the theater, and I recognized a couple whom we had dined with the night before. And I started to go over and say, "Oh, buonasera, how are you? Wasn't that pleasant last evening?" And my husband took me aside and said, "Shh, quiet, we don't know these people. We don't know these people." Well, we did know these people. There were times when really I didn't know what role we were playing. Who are we tonight?
We'd go somewhere, family trip on the weekend, picnic basket in the back, and he'd meet somebody, have a conversation, deliver something. He and my mother and the family left town and drove up north and went and passed a radio to somebody. So we'd have a picnic. That wasn't a lie. Sometime later, one of my dad's friends said, "You know, your mother has a lot to do with your father's success." They were a great team.
The family wasn't always let into this world of his. Beginning, of course, with this CIA code of need to know. He never had to really tell me anything. I suppose that's the CIA modus operandi, but even so, I remember hearing one CIA wife, a rather high-ranking officer, say, "Oh, my husband tells me everything." Well, I was a little jealous, but I thought, no, it couldn't be. They don't tell us everything. They tell us very little, if anything.
Why did Mom agree to do this?
Well, it was interesting. When I first set out doing these interviews, I thought, well, I'll obviously call up my dad's old friends And that got me about 3 or 4 interviews. I did 85 interviews in total. 35 interviews are in the film. And then I started thinking, well, I better talk to people like James Schlesinger, Brent Scowcroft, hopefully Donald Rumsfeld, people of that ilk, generals, admirals. How am I going to do that?
And James Schlesinger had been CIA director.
And he had been CIA director before my father, actually.
And Brent Scowcroft had been National Security Advisor.
Exactly.
Okay.
So with people of that ilk, you can call them up and they'll say, hi, Carl, maybe. But they're not going to agree to an interview unless... So I probably took 2 days to write each of those emails and attracting them in. So I started interviewing people, and then almost as an afterthought, I said, well, I think I'll interview my mother. She'll have something to say. And then the whole movie changed because she brought the human element. She brought the underneath. What are we doing? What is she doing? She's keeping him to a high moral standard. She referred to the CIA euphemistically as Catholics in action, just like in the FBI, especially in the early years. A lot of Catholics, because they have a moral compass, and they certainly operate from a moral point of view, or at least you hope they do. Religion, morality is part of their mindset. And it was part of mine too, because I went to Gonzaga here in D.C., and I went to Georgetown, so I was surrounded by the Jesuits. And they made you think. We were taken as boys to the March on Washington, the tent city. And the priest would say, what do you think? Is this legal? Should they be here without a permit? Is there a greater cause at work here? What do you boys think? What do you 14-year-olds think? That's the best education I ever got. But to your point, my mother lived the life. She was his partner. She may not have known very many secrets, or any secrets at all. But she supported the member of the club. She was not a member, but she supported the membership, just like we all did. I remember once I had been in Indonesia, and I said, oh, I met Mr. X. Fantastic guy, you know, really wonderful. Says really nice things about you, too. He said, oh, never repeat his name again.
The military men involved in all of this gives one pause to think. He was a military man. When we realize now that we have sort of de facto military men running our government, it makes it extremely interesting to watch this. The same moral questions being posed, the exact same, you heard the phrase witch hunt in this. It is remarkable how the story never changes. Willa Cather said there's really only 2 or 3 stories, and they're just rewritten over and over. And here is one that's rewritten over and over. Some of the remarkable things about this film that if you see other, I mean, I'm always hoping that you'll, go on YouTube and see other interviews. But the fact that his mother, Carl's mother, looks remarkable. She looks fantastic. She herself, to me, was one of the most interesting characters in the film. There are things that we would like to know more about, but this is not the kind of family that's going to be so forthcoming. His mother is extremely open, considering that her husband walked out on her at not a pleasant time in her life in her 60s, remarried. There's a whole lot of drama going on here. But this is, I would say, an epic American story, magnificently filmed. And because it is the son, it also gives us a lot to think about. I insist that you watch the C-SPAN. I have sent it to you, and we're going to see the end portion of it now.
My father had little or no support from what Woodward calls in the film Ford, the accidental president.
When's the DVD coming out?
It will be out probably next summer. So.
I must say that we're going to show a clip next. This was a surprise to me when I watched the documentary. I don't know where I missed this. Let's run it, and you can tell us about it.
Okay. I'm not sure he ever loved anyone, and I never heard him say anything heartfelt. By the time I turned 30, I came to understand the man that nobody knew. Or at least I thought I did.
When he said, I want a divorce, I was really knocked over, really surprised and shocked. I said, but we're Catholic, we don't believe in divorce. So there goes the Catholicism? I mean, I don't know. He was a dedicated public servant who gave his best to his work, and I think we had a good family life as long as it lasted, and let's say he was, I guess I would say he was a complicated person whom maybe I didn't know as well as I would hope to think I do.
When I was watching, I thought, it really did stop me dead because I didn't know.
Yeah.
But I wondered, why in the world would she have cooperated with you to tell? Because up until that point, it's all very sympathetic.
My mother's an honest person. She has courage, and she has character. And I think she's not afraid to face the truth. And my father changed, in my opinion, after he was thrown out of the agency. I think if you watch the film closely and study him, he's a soldier. He took on the toughest, dirtiest assignments given to him by the presidents from Eisenhower onward. But when it came time for the president, Ford in this case, to ask him to lie and mislead Congress, he couldn't do it. Where's the authority, moral or otherwise, as Woodward says in the film? I think he sided with the Constitution. It was his obligation to remember, back being that liberal Democratic lawyer from New York, Law Review, Columbia, he knows the law. There's a very big law out there, Article 1. Congress has an authority, and you can't speak falsely to Congress or to the American people.
He was fired in 1976 by Gerald Ford.
Right.
What was was he given a reason by the president?
No, just going to 32 times up to testify to Capitol Hill in 1 year. I think he had seriously lost control of that process. I think Congress it was a witch hunt by then. He'd become the whipping boy. He'd lost a lot of authority as Director of Central Intelligence, and I think the White House just wanted to get a handle on this. So they put in George H.W. Bush, who was a friend of a lot of people in Congress and who was a politician. And Congress is made up of politicians, and they could deal with a politician.
We found this from Peter Jennings' newscast on the fifth month of the year, 16th day in 1996. It's about a minute and a half. Let's watch it.
In Maryland today, the body of William Colby was recovered from a marshy area of the Wicomico River. The former CIA director, a complex man who masterminded covert U.S. operations and then spent years repudiating them, had been missing after taking a canoe trip 8 days ago now. Here's ABC's Jack Smith.
Colby's wife, Sally, who had continued until the end to hold out hope he was alive, spoke to reporters about her husband after identifying his body.
There was not much that was left undone for him. He fought the fascists and he fought the communists, and he lived to see democracy taking hold around the world.
Officials at the scene say there is no indication of foul play.
We are still considering this a fatal boat accident. That's how it's being investigated at this point.
Colby, a lifelong spy, was the perfect undercover agent, the traditional gray man, he once wrote, so inconspicuous he can never catch the waiter's eye in a restaurant. He was fired as CIA director in the 1970s after advocating a retreat from cloak and dagger operations, and continued raising eyebrows by advocating nuclear disarmament. President Clinton issued a statement praising Colby as a dedicated public servant who ably led the CIA through challenging times. And Sally Colby echoed those thoughts not far from the river where her husband was found.
His children and I, his wife, are very proud of him and very proud for what he accomplished and what he brought to this world.
Jack Smith, ABC News, Washington.
Jack Smith, who's the son of Howard K. Smith, reporting that.
Fantastic.
What was your relationship with his second wife?
Cordial. I would see him and her when I would visit Washington in the 1980s and early 90s. Here and there, every few months, we get together and have dinner at his house. But I kept up with my father on the telephone here and there, and saw him in Los Angeles or in New York whenever I would be there, because I wasn't living in Washington at the time.
How do you think he died?
Well, I think he, as the coroner's reports, probably overexerted himself and had a heart attack or a stroke while he was out paddling his canoe in the mid-evening after he'd had a few drinks and fixed himself his favorite meal. But I have to say, in my opinion, I hark back to a conversation I'd had with him a few months before he died, and I called him up, or we were talking, and I said, by the way, your old friend Judge Teeter was found under a bridge in Middlebury, Vermont, where he lives, and he has advanced Alzheimer's and spent the night under a bridge. He said, oh, that'll never happen to me. And I said, really? And my dad said, yep. He said, one day you're going to hear I was walking along a goat path on a Greek island, and I fell to the sea. And I said, really? He goes, yep, just like that. He didn't want the AARP card. Never accepted the senior discount. Got angry with me once when I said, you'd get a discount if you took that flight on a senior discount. He didn't want to grow old.
No evidence of foul play here, or did you get
No,
any?
I mean, we looked into it, and I'm sure the agency looked into it, and there wasn't any foul play. I mean, he had enemies, but it had been a long time ago. But
What was your mother's reaction?
I think she was saddened that he was gone. She was, of course, not the widow. She didn't receive the flag at Arlington. But I think she was sad, really, that he was gone. I think she admired him.
Did you think at any time he took his own life?
No, I wouldn't.
Not liking?
Not really like him, but I think he was done. I think he had done what he was going to do.
He was how old?
76.
So this documentary is, of course, given over to William Colby. I mean, the documentary is about him, but his whole family is included, and it makes it extremely interesting to see it. Also, I mean, this is like 2 or 3 films wrapped up in one. The history of Vietnam is remarkable. I learned more about the history of Vietnam watching this film, and now this is the perfect companion piece to Ken Burns' his great new PBS film. It's going to be on, for 10 weeks or something, on Vietnam. This is just perfect to have this information. So I hope you'll watch this film. I hope you'll watch the PBS Ken Burns film. Give me your comments. Let me know what you're thinking, please. And I'll see you. Oh, no, next week, a new film that we're going to see. It's not new, it's old. It's, I think, new to you, I bet. Voyager, made by all Germans, but it's in English. Sam Shepard's greatest role. We're honoring Sam Shepard. I'm so sad that he died. What a talented person. But it's 1991 film, and that'll be our next film. Give me comments, talk, watch movies. I'll see you next time. Thank you. So thank you so much for watching. I'm going to see you next time. I want you to click the subscribe button to Brainy Classes. I want you to scroll down, enter the comments box, and make some comments, please, because I like to know what you think. Again, thanks for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye.